All right, guys. So we have another scandal that blew up with Trump. You know how every now and then he'll say something and then there'll be news for 3 days straight and everybody will flip out and he'll get billions of dollars in free media over it because you'll have people who are defending him and people who are attacking him. And next thing you know, all we're doing is talking about Trump 24/7 and it ends up, I think, helping him at the end of the day. Well, anyway, we have a moment like this that just happened. So he was doing a rally in Ohio. And he made this comment, which is being perceived by the left and the right in a complete opposite fashion. They do not at all agree on what was meant by this comment. So let's watch, and then I'll break it down for you.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. Mexico has taken over a period of 30 years.
So they just did a little snippet. Now you're going to see the thing in its full context. But just to reiterate here, that's the contentious comment. If I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath. And liberals are looking at that and saying, like, he's basically admitting there's going to be another January 6th, another coup attempt. There's going to be violence in the street. There's going to be riots. And it's an admission that it's going to come from his people. Like, this is the gist of the liberal perspective on this. Then now you're going to see the full context of what he said there. You guys make up your own mind, but I'm going to give you my takeaway in just a minute. Here, I have it on 1.25 times speed. I'm going to slow it down for you.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. Mexico has taken over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it. Went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States.
Just a couple quick points. His massive tax cut for the rich bill incentivized outsourcing. In fact, under him, we lost 200,000 jobs, 200,000 factory jobs. So the idea that he's up there bemoaning outsourcing of jobs is laughable because when he was president, he did dick about that. In fact, he did put on this whole show about the carrier facility that he was coming to save. And what happened? He did a rally there, and he tried to promote the idea he's saving the jobs. Within a year, all the jobs were outsourced anyway. And on top of that, he gave them massive subsidies of taxpayer money. They stole the money. The company stole the money and outsourced the jobs anyway. So again, the idea he's going to protect you from your jobs being outsourced is factually wrong based on his own record in his first term. Sorry. I won't interject again until we get to the end.
Now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
So that's the full context. So the Republican/conservative response to what the liberals are saying is, if you look at it in its full context, he's clearly saying, he's talking about economically it's going to be a bloodbath, because if I'm in there, I'm going to protect American jobs, I'm going to tariff the foreign products, and I'll incentivize creating. Now, I already described how he didn't incentivize creating jobs here. There was a net outsourcing of 200,000 jobs. And by the way, under Joe Biden, for all of his many, many, many flaws, and he has a lot of them, we have a net increase of 800,000 manufacturing jobs. So on this one, the record is not close. Biden is just better than Trump. But what conservatives are saying is, look at the full context. He's not saying it's going to be a bloodbath as in there's going to be violence in the streets. What he's saying is there's going to be a bloodbath economically vis-a-vis the auto industry, right? If it's not me. If it is me, there won't be. If it's not me, there will be. So now I want to go back and play this portion of it one more time, because the reason why, so when I first saw this, the full context, I thought, you know what, sorry, but I think the Republicans are right in their interpretation of it. But there is something at the very end that makes it convoluted and makes it very ambiguous. And so then I'm going to show you this and then give you my full conclusion, which may be a little surprising to some people, but I think it's inevitable at this point. So one more time.
Those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
Okay. So that last portion then makes it ambiguous again. If I don't get elected, it'll be a bloodbath, and that'll be the least of it. So even if you're interpreting what he says as it'll be a bloodbath economically, because the auto industry thing that he just brought up, well, then he goes on to say, and that'll be the least of it. The least you'll have to worry about is the bloodbath economically from Biden's bad policies, right? So then, okay, what is the other thing you're hinting at here? By the way, we can clear this up very quickly. All you need is a reporter to ask Trump, do you think there will be violence if you lose? And then he'll answer it. And then we'll know if he thinks, hey, there might be riots, there might be violence, there might be a, quote, bloodbath in that scenario. And I think I think he said it before in rallies that, yeah, if I don't win, there's going to be violence. And it shouldn't be that surprising because that's what happened last time. That's what happened with January 6th. That's what happened with him attempting to coup the government. The fraudulent elector scheme, their words, not mine. This is what happened. So, by the way, and this is something I think people have been underestimating the damage of and the danger of, is there's no way anything ends well. No way. Because we got Trump versus Biden. Let's just assume, for argument's sake, they both make it all the way to Election Day. Well, what's going to happen? If Biden wins, Trump is just going to say he won, and then Lord only knows what happens from there. Lord only knows if he calls bodies to the streets and there is violence and there are riots or things of that nature. So that's one possible scenario. Then you get the scenario, if Trump wins, we get 4 more years of Trump. But beyond that, last time Trump won, we had the Women's March, which was mostly peaceful, overwhelmingly peaceful. But it was like the biggest protest in U.S. history. Who's to say that if Trump wins this time, that we won't have the biggest protest in history and it won't be violent to one extent or another, right? So there is no, like, from where we are now, there is no kumbaya, let's hold hands, everything's okay moment. It's all going to be disastrous. I don't see any way out of this where we come out unscathed. So our institutions were truly, truly questioned. There was a stress test of our institutions last time. This time, it's probably going to be an even bigger stress test. It might even be a worse stress test. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but everything tells me that I'm not. And so, okay, so what's my final conclusion on this? A long time ago, Corin and I were having a debate on Kyle and Corin. And the point I made to Corin is, no, I think Trump really means what he says and believes what he says. And he's just sort of a crazy old Fox News brain-wormed grandpa. And Corin was insistent that no, Trump says shit for the sole purpose of baiting the backlash and the reaction and getting his name in the news cycle and making it so that he's the number one conversation in the country ad nauseum, ad infinitum. And having now watched Trump for years more, because Corin and I had this conversation years ago, I am 100% convinced that that's what's going on. In fact, again, Trump even admitted it at one point. He won one of the primaries and Doug Burgum had endorsed him and Doug Burgum was next to him on stage. And Trump said something really interesting. He was like, you know what this guy doesn't understand? Big, beautiful, handsome man, great politician. But what he doesn't understand is that sometimes you can be a little bit too clean. Sometimes you need a little bit of controversy. I was like, holy shit, this is through the looking glass. He knows what goes on with the media dynamic around him. And so, what's my takeaway from this? Trump purposefully made it sound ambiguous so that we'd all be debating it and screaming about it and yelling at each other. And then boom, he's the number one story in the country yet again for another 3 or 4 days straight. So that's what's going on here. The fact of the matter is, the interpretations that conservative Republicans have is legitimate. Because certainly, if one cursory listen to it and you're like, yeah, kind of is, I do think he's talking about the auto industry there. That was the context of what he was saying. That's a legitimate interpretation. But then I think the liberals have a point when they go on to say, hey, listen to the few seconds after that, when he talks about it'll be a bloodbath, and that's the least of it. That's the least of it. Okay, if that's the least of it, well, what's worse? What comes after that? Certainly could be alluding to violence in the streets, actual bloodbath type stuff. So I think they're both right. And so my takeaway is, yes, he's doing it on purpose. He's doing this on purpose. Say something that's really ambiguous, but really like over the top. And boom, the media starts talking about you nonstop. It's another $1 billion more in free advertising, and we're off to the races here. He knows how to manipulate the media better than anybody. Okay, but I got one more for you. Because we had another moment from the same frickin' rally with the exact same problem. So you're telling me this isn't on purpose? You're telling me he's not doing this on purpose? You're telling me he doesn't understand exactly what he's doing? Dropping a stink bomb of controversy, then letting everybody yell about it, and he's in the center of it all? Okay, here we go. So this one is going to be on immigration. There was a lot of yelling over this one. Let's listen.
Unbelievable when I see it going. But I got to know all these people. They're very smart, very streetwise. And I would do the same thing. If I had prisons that were teeming with MS-13 and all sorts of people that they've got to take care of for the next 50 years, right? Young people, they're in jail for years, and if you call them people. I don't know if you call them people. In some cases, they're not people, in my opinion, but I'm not allowed to say that because the radical left says that's a terrible thing to say. They say you have to vote against him because did you hear what he said about humanity? I've seen the humanity, and these are bad. These are animals, okay? And we have to stop it. We can't have another Lakin. We have so many people. We have so many people being hurt so badly and being killed. They're sending their prisoners to see us. And they're bringing them right to the border. And they're dropping them off, and we're allowing them to come in. And these are tougher than anybody we've got in the country. These are hardened criminals. And we've got hundreds of thousands of them. And we're not going to take it. We're just not going to take it. They are destroying our country. I'm telling you, he's the worst president we've ever had and the most incompetent president we've ever had. And he's also the most crooked president we have ever had. Now, other than that, I think he's doing an excellent job. Do we agree?
So the scandal here is he's saying they aren't people. They aren't people. And they're animals, right? The right is saying, God, you dumb liberals, he's just talking about MS-13. Why are you defending MS-13? That's what the conservatives are saying. The liberals and the leftists are saying, he wasn't referring just to MS-13. He said literally hundreds of thousands of them are coming in the country. We don't have hundreds of thousands of MS-13 coming in the country. He's talking about immigrants in general. And he's also bringing up, he's done this story 1,000 times. He goes, they're emptying their prisons and sending their people here and dropping them off at the border. Okay, number one, that's not happening. Number two, the only time that actually did happen in U.S. history was when Fidel Castro emptied his prisons and sent the people to Florida, to the U.S., knowing that the U.S. had the policy of, like, if you're Cuban and you step 1 foot on, you become a citizen. And in that scenario, it did happen, but that was a long time ago. And also, all those people voted Republican, so the Republicans welcomed them with open arms. So they didn't care. There's like, okay, if you're going to vote Republican, I don't care that you're a criminal. We're pro-Cubans getting here because you're escaping communism and you're coming to freedom. So if you step here, you're an American citizen. Boom. We're going to make it quick and easy for you. So to the extent that ever happened, the Republicans were in favor of it. But now it's not happening now, but he pretends like it is happening now. And he says they're not people, they're animals. Again, the right says he's just referring to MS-13. Don't defend MS-13. And the liberals and the leftists are saying he's not talking about just MS-13. He said hundreds of thousands. There are not hundreds of thousands of MS-13 coming into this country. That is idiotic if you believe that. So, guys, this is the exact same freaking thing as the last comment we talked about. This is the exact same thing. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. Say something incredibly incendiary. Say something that's over the top, super controversial. You know it's controversial. Obfuscate it just enough where you could have, like, the people who want to defend you come up with a more benign interpretation of it and say just enough so the people who don't agree with you say, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about all immigrants aren't people. And here we are. Round and round we go. Boom. Media talks about it for another 2-3 days. Center of attention. You know, anytime the media goes out, and people don't like the media, so anytime the media goes after a candidate, it helps them. Oftentimes it helps them. I guess it depends on the substance, right? But in this instance, it helps them. And this is exactly what we saw in 2016. So he is working the media like a master manipulator. And it's scary to me. You know what it reminds me of? Here, I'll end on this point. We talked about this at the time, too. In 2016, he gave a speech, and in it, he said, the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, is another free trade deal, is an outsourcing deal, gave corporations way more power. He goes, the TPP is raping us. The TPP is raping our country. And you, based on the reaction of that, you would have thought he dropped another nuclear bomb on Hiroshima. Like, that was the reaction of it. Because, oh my, you're using the term rape. CNN had on, like, rape survivors to talk about how offended they were at the comments. And I remember watching it like, oh my God, man. There's so many things to go after this man over. And the thing you settle on are, like, the particulars of the language. I don't think this is working. I don't think this is helping. I know that their goal is we're going to try to take down Trump. But the way in which they're doing it was scaring me because I didn't think it would work. Because obviously the point he was trying to make is I'm against the TPP. It's going to outsource your jobs. I want to protect your jobs. So let me rail against it. That's what I think most people took from it. But they just hyper-focused on the idea he said rape. And their outrage didn't land, right? And Trump, of course, ended up winning in 2016. So I just fear we're going down that path again. There's so many ways to go after this man that I've discussed on this channel, which are undeniable. That, you know, there is no way out of it. Like, it's just going to be body blow after body blow to him. But the way they're doing, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's like, here we are again. Did the fascist president say some more fascist shit? It's like, at this point, does it even really matter? Because he already said he wants to suspend the Constitution, terminate the Constitution. He said that he wrote it. It wasn't even like something you could haggle or argue over the specific. He wrote it on Truth Social. So yeah, the guy who's going to come out and say all rules and regulations and laws and the Constitution, they're hereby terminated in response to such horrible enemies, right? That was, I'm paraphrasing what he said there. If he said that, like, we've already hit peak for what he says. You're not gonna top that. You're not gonna outrage yourself over and above that one, right? So, in other words, focus more on the actual actions. What he did as president and how it was harmful. What he's going to do and what he says he's going to do. The 91 criminal charges. The corruption. I don't think the language games are going to work necessarily, you know? But here we are. I mean, it's like we hopped in a fucking time machine and went back to 2016. There was the, what did they say? There was some tweet the other day. Lin-Manuel Miranda, the guy from Hamilton, and Hillary Clinton are going to do some joint event to try to promote Biden. And, like, there was an Onion tweet in 2016 that had, like, it was almost that exactly. Like, we hopped in a time machine. We're right back then. Oh, it's terrifying. It's scaring me, y'all. It's scaring me. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.